Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Clare Scott. I'm a writer and psychotherapist, and I use creative writing therapeutically with individuals and groups. These sessions are for people who may wish to try writing as part of their own work towards their own well-being, or maybe you just fancy having a go at doing some creative writing. Today, I shall be considering another of the five senses, touch. Sometimes we may find that circumstances make us hyper-aware of the environment around us. We may become super sensitive to our experience, possibly even to the point where it may feel painful. So it is important to stay grounded, to keep our feet firmly planted and breathing regularly. To begin, I want you to make sure that you are sitting comfortably. Feel your spine straight and your head straight above it. Feel your feet both firmly planted on the floor beneath you. And close your eyes if you wish. Take a deep breath from your stomach. And then let go of that breath. And again. This time we'll take a measured breath. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. And again, breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold. And now I want you to notice the sounds in the room around you. What can you hear in your immediate environment? Extend your listening to the sounds further afield. What can you hear a bit beyond your immediate space? Now notice your clothes. Feel the material as it rests on your skin. Feel how you're sitting on the chair. Feel your feet on the ground against the floor. Now notice any tastes in your mouth. Any smells? What can you smell around you? Along with this heightened awareness, you may have a greater sense of vulnerability, along with the sharpening of your senses, thoughts about life and death. In this session, we're going to explore the meaning of touch for us. Its importance as a faculty has been emphasised by our current situation. We're unable to get close enough to touch anyone other than those with whom we are sharing our isolation. To be able to touch others, we have to be in their physical presence, and this possibility is removed from our immediate interactions, especially when we're using online communication. Touch has a significance for us on many levels. As Margaret Atwood wrote in Der blinde Mörder, touch comes before sight, before speech. It is the first language and the last, and it always tells the truth. Touch as a sense is more complicated than the others because it requires movement to be activated. The sense of touch is one of the central forms of the perceptual experience. It's thought to be the first sense to develop, and it occurs across the whole body because it uses a variety of receptors in the skin. It often combines those signals with information from the stretch receptors in the muscles and tendons too, as we actively move and explore the world. Touch is involved in two forms of activity. That is using the kinesthetic sort of movement, the awareness of movement, and proprioception, which is an awareness of bodily position in the immediate environment. This sense of touch is usually too referred to as haptic touch, in that there is a sense of activity in the experience. And it involves the activation of the kinesthetic and proprioceptive systems. Having thought about how this particular sense works, I'd like you now to think about your experience of touch. Maybe you could find some things around you and just dwell upon those different sensations. I have some objects here. So if we start with this lovely red velvet and its softness, its velvetiness, its smoothness. What words could you think of to describe that velvet? And I've got a very light, soft scarf, and the sensitivity of my skin is raised as I feel that gentle touch. Here we have a woolen material, a woolen woven knitted blanket, and that's much more rough. If I had that over my knees, I'd be feeling its warmth and its heaviness, heavier than this for sure. And then here we have a lovely soft, fluffy, furry blanket, and that has a different sensation again. And if we come here, I've got an amber necklace, and these shapes are all rounded. But there's also a coolness about it, and there's almost, it feels a bit plasticky too. That's an amber necklace from Russia. And then this crystal, there's the spikiness of these little crystals as they stand, a sharpness. And here, another necklace with spheres, smooth spheres, and a satin ribbon here, which again has a silkiness to it. And then here, a much cooler object made from copper, and the spoon bit here is smoother because it's handmade. There's a roughness, it's been beaten to have uneven edges that I can feel. That's colder to the touch. And now there'll be some photos you can see from places in the woodland nearby. There are the whorls of a tree trunk that looks almost as if it's made of stone. And then the holly with its spikes, and yet the sheen of its leaves is really smooth to the touch, but the ends are sharp. And then there is moss growing on a trunk, and the softness of that moss, and there is a density to it. And then a bramble with its thorns that spike me if I touch them. So there are some ideas of some of the experiences I have around me for touching, and I'm wondering if you can find objects of your own, and maybe you would like to explore some descriptive words either for things that I've shown you, or maybe you want to use that exploration with your own objects. I've limited my language because I want you to explore and see what other words you can come up with. And next, we're going to do a hand poem. So that involves having a sheet that is big enough to take your hand, and it could be a plain sheet. Either way, it's up to you. So you draw around your hand like this, and the idea for this hand poem is also described in the Lapidus International's Little Book of Creative Writing Prompts. Now, I want you to look at that outline. Take your pen, and I want you to think about what you're going to write. How are you going to write your poem? Are you going to write it along the outlines of your hand? Are you going to fill each finger up, thinking about the relevance of each finger in your experiences? Is there anything particular you might want to say in relation to your thumb? Maybe you want to write across the palm of your hand. Think about what this hand has held, what this hand has touched, what this hand has experienced, what it has felt, and put that in your poem. So now if you give yourself time to write whatever it is you want to write, it's your poem, it's the outline of your hand. You can write the words in whatever places you want on that page. Over to you. Pause and write. Now we're going to take an images poem in relation to this sense. It's called The Pool and was written by somebody who called herself H.D. as a poet. Her actual name was Hilda Doolittle. And for those of you who don't know about images poetry, then Ezra Pound is someone you might want to look at. He was a key name. The idea is to use an image and write a short poem, 5 lines, which depicts that image, but at the same time says something more, something deeper. Anyway, this is the poem by Hilda Doolittle, H.D. Are you alive? I touch you. You quiver like a sea fish. I cover you with my net. What are you, banded one? And that particular poem was written while she was pregnant. But I wonder what senses you use when you read that. What senses you feel are being aroused by the images in that poem, the image in that poem. What do you think it's about? What do you see in your mind's eye? And thinking about that, maybe you could think of an image, an experience where touch was really important to you. Can you describe it briefly in 5 lines? Maybe have a go now. See what you can do with a particular incident, an image in your mind. For me, I can think of that rock pool and there's a little fish swimming around in it. That's where the pool takes me to. Pause and write. I wonder what you've written, what image you chose, what experience. I chose to write about this copper spoon brought back by a friend as a present. I feel your coolness and yet the warmth of copper, beaten unevenly by an artisan, smooth in a cup. The tip of you curves towards me. Now, I don't think that's finished. I could go away and work on it. But that's the beginnings of an image poem, a poem using an image. I'd love to know what you've written. Now we're going to look at a poem called The Touch by Anne Sexton. You can find it online in the Poetry Foundation website. For months my hand was sealed off in a tin box. Nothing was there but the subway railings. Perhaps it is bruised, I thought, and that is why they have locked it up. You could tell time by this, I thought, like a clock, by its 5 knuckles and the thin underground veins. It lay there like an unconscious woman, fed by tubes she knew not of. The hand had collapsed, a small wood pigeon that had gone into seclusion. I turned it over, and the palm was old, its lines traced like fine needlepoint and stitched up into fingers. It was fat and soft and blind in places, nothing but vulnerable. And all this is metaphor, an ordinary hand just lonely for something to touch that touches back. The dog won't do it. Her tail wags in the swamp for a frog. I'm no better than a case of dog food. She owns her own hunger. My sisters won't do it. They live in school except for buttons and tears running down like lemonade. My father won't do it. He comes in the house, and even at night he lives in a machine made by my mother and well oiled by his job. The trouble is that I'd let my gestures freeze. The trouble was not in the kitchen or the tulips, but only in my head. Then all this became history. Your hand found mine. Life rushed to my fingers like a blood clot. Oh, my carpenter, the fingers are rebuilt. They dance with yours. They dance in the attic and in Vienna. My hand is alive all over America. Not even death will stop it. Death shedding her blood. Nothing will stop it, for this is the kingdom, and the kingdom come. What I like about this poem, particularly at this time, is the optimism in it. The fact that there is hope, that after that long period of description of loneliness and no excitement, that last stanza gives us much more vibrant hope, vibrant description. And today I'm going to finish with a quote by C. Joybell C, who you can find on YouTube. She's a vlogger, and she talks about more than our 5 senses. So these are just some thoughts to leave you with. Our bodies have 5 senses: touch, smell, taste, sight, hearing. But not to be overlooked are the senses of our souls: intuition, peace, foresight, trust, empathy. The differences between people lie in their use of these senses. Most people don't know about the inner senses, while a few people rely on them just as they rely on their physical senses, and in fact, probably even more. Do you rely on the senses of your soul? Thank you.